Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and oh boy, would you look at that. It looks like they're actually headed towards banning the goddamn VPNs in our world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pretty alarming uptick into what's been going on, but let me just basically fill you in. The last 2 years, we've been talking about the internet being like, regulated to the point that accessing basically any website is going to require you to whip out your wallet and show your identification. Now you might be like, but Muta, what's the problem with that? Okay, we gotta protect the children. You know, when you go to a bar, Muta, don't you know that they ask for your ID before they serve you a drink? Well, first off, if you look as old as me, they never fucking do that. But second of all, when I show a bartender my driver's license, the bartender does not whip out the phone, take a photo of it, and keep that inside their records 100%. They usually just glance, they see, oh, hell yeah, Mr. Muta is over the age of 18. He can guzzle a nice, delicious bottle of beer. But of course, obviously, when the government asks you or a website asks you for ID to prove you're 18 plus, they don't just delete that information. Sometimes they leave it in their servers long enough that it gets exploited by a bunch of hackers, and now I gotta worry about my fucking credit rating getting tanked because some guy has my information to do God knows what they want with it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, I think internet censorship, internet age verification, any of the stuff is wrong. Now, ultimately, the end, people always say, Muta, what about the kids? You know, very rarely do I whip out the fuck them kids meme. But to give you an idea, listen, if you don't care about your children, I don't care about your children. I only care about my children in this case. Really, if you care about the kids, please be a goddamn parent. We do not need the government jumping in, basically adding in these blocks online, because you can't fucking do your job after making a child. Okay, you have done one of the most sacred and important things in human biology. Take care of it. The reason these laws are being made is not because the government cares about kids. Remember, the UK government does not care about kids. They had their whole issue with like grooming gangs. We have an entire government in North America that does not care about releasing files specifically related to the abuse of children so we can go after the people that have actually harmed children. None of these governments give a shit about children, okay? If you care about kids, but government don't care. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to the meat and potatoes. So anyways, one of the reasons why I'm making this video too is because ultimately I want to show you the absurdity of the situation and to sort of raise awareness into what I think is probably going to be the death of the internet as we know it. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, again, to look inside the UK Parliament, again, this is the government of the United Kingdom. And again, I know that I'm not a United Kingdom resident, but remember, I'm also in the Commonwealth, okay? I'm in Canada, all right? The UK has some strength here, as sad as it is. But ultimately, if it happens in one big country like the UK, you bet your ass it's going to happen everywhere. If you think you're safe because you're an American, for instance, remember, I think half the United States now needs like age verification to access adult websites. And it starts with the adult websites because ultimately it's an easy like dig. You know, hey, you don't want kids getting access to adult movies, and that's pretty true and upfront, right? Most people, if not all, genuinely don't want kids to access unfiltered pornography on the internet. But what happens when the vagueness of these laws start reaching out to other platforms? Platforms that probably do more harm getting banned than good, because they're ultimately sharing information freely for people. Ultimately, it's a very, very slippery slope into, censorship, into control of information, and ultimately monitoring what you do on the internet without your consent. So going into this amendment over here, because the internet bans in the United Kingdom are so bad that, again, companies like Pornhub have basically stopped serving UK residents. 4chan has stopped serving them. A lot of platforms have just stopped because even if they're not, adult providers, they fall under some weird laws that, put a lot of blame onto them. And a lot of the UK companies, or the Ofcom, the actual office that, verifies and runs this stuff, they've been running lawsuits internationally against places like 4chan and the Kiwi Farms, for instance. And they've been, pretty much getting so fucked to the point that they are being countersued. It's an insane situation to witness. But anyways, if you look at these websites over here, Clause 27, action to prohibit the provision of VPN services to children in the United Kingdom. So they know that their laws are so bad, that it's so unenforceable, that many people in the United Kingdom have been just running VPN. So I think there was something like a 6,000% spike as soon as these laws came into effect, where UK residents were like, all right, download a VPN, bypass these shitty laws. Now, ultimately, if you're using things like free VPNs, which in this case could be a lot of organizations just stealing your information, pretty much because most people don't understand, A, how a VPN really works. You're just running all your traffic through other servers anyways. But because it's free, they just want to access their porn, for instance. They fire on a VPN. Maybe they just leave that VPN running, so it's just grabbing information off. Not a good thing. But ultimately over here, within 12 months of the day on which this act is passed, for the purpose of furthering the protection and well-being of children, again, the government does not care about children, okay? No government really actually cares. This is just a way for them to push shitty laws. Make regulations which prohibit the provision to UK children of a relevant VPN service. So the child VPN prohibition. So the regulations may make provisions for the provider of a relevant VPN service to apply to any person seeking to access its service in or from the UK age assurance, which is highly effective at correctly determining whether or not that person is a child. B, must apply the child VPN prohibition to the provider of any relevant VPN service which is, or is likely to be, offered to market it to persons in the UK, provided to a significant number of persons. So basically any popular online service, right? Now again, what they talk about over here with age assurance is there's kind of two ways to do this, right? One of them is utilizing sort of an AI scanning feature. So you know how you get like your face is scanned and sometimes you have to like blink or do something to show that you're not like a picture? That'll be used through an artificial intelligence, and the AI will then verify if you're an adult. Sometimes that can fail because the AI can mischaracterize you as a child. Sometimes it can mischaracterize a child as an adult, okay? These things are not perfect. Arguably, what will probably be used here is the tried and traditional, show us your driver's license, show us your papers, please. Now, the problem is showing your papers to any service and imagining that they're not going to delete that within 24 hours is a statistical impossibility, it seems, because of so many of these database hacks that have been going on, okay? So now you have to provide your ID to use a VPN. Now, the issue with this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, is you're basically letting the government create a physical, like a digital trail onto what you do. They can kind of already do that with, trackers and internet service providers, but ultimately, privacy-focused tools like VPNs are utterly meaningless if all of a sudden the information that is attached to you is directly connected to your real-world ID with the profile that you're using. That is never going to fly. Now, it's kind of insane because I feel like the government just doesn't understand VPNs, right? We're going to get to a point where a lot of people are going to get so frustrated because internet access is going to be so annoying that they might actually have to start looking up things like Tailscale. Now, this is a quick start guide on how to make something known as a tailnet. Now, if you follow these 6 directions, and, well, they're a little bit more complicated than just 6 directions, you can create yourself your own tailnet that you can connect to with your mobile devices, your computer devices, and basically get your own VPN, your own place. So basically you make a tailnet in a country that is not censored yet. So if you're from the United Kingdom, you might have to make a tailnet that basically takes you out of this area, makes you connect to servers, say, in something like Los Angeles, and then you can access the internet because for now, most of the internet, in fact, none of these laws seem to actually have an effect in the state of California. This is the issue with the internet right now, okay? For instance, if you're in the state of Texas and you want to watch porn for whatever reason, right? Let's say you don't want to give your ID, right? You're some guy sitting in Austin. You're like, I just want to nut right now. I don't want to give the government my ID, potentially have that shit leaked. You know what they have to do? They have to think, all right, let's just VPN myself to like Tamaulipas. Let me VPN myself to maybe San Diego, and then I'll go through that way. But if you have to give your VPN company in the future, not saying this will pass in America, hopefully it won't, hopefully, then they'll still have some idea of what you're doing, right? Because, hey, this person has a VPN account, this is what the account is tied to, and of course, in a country like the United States, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, you have to fork over VPN information when the government requests it. But again, for a lot of people that really do care about their privacy, I don't know what the government is going to do about shit like Mulvad VPN. Now, this is Mulvad VPN. I've promoted this plenty of times. I am not sponsored by this company, nor do I really want to be sponsored. They probably wouldn't know what my account is because you don't even have to provide them information to make an account. I have shown you on my channel, using cryptocurrency like Monero, I was able to pay for access to this VPN. What the fuck is the government gonna do about a company that doesn't take any information to begin with? Is they gonna be blocking the traffic to this area? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Are we entering a world of internet segregation? We've already been there, okay? We're already there. Now, for a lot of these guys, I'm pretty sure that they're going to make things like the Brit card a big deal, right? Like, hey, listen, guys, it's going to be real easy for you to prove yourself. Here's a digital ID that you can just show to these services. And ultimately, like I said in this video, it's just to make a trail of where you're going to on the internet. Again, the government can kind of do it. This just basically allows it so that any form of circumventing these shitty laws to keep your privacy and safety online will therefore just become illegal or impossible. You know, it's so insane that, like, the more I look into this topic, one of the things that I can show you that, like, I didn't even know existed until I was researching just this new development was something known as the UK Packet Radio Network. Yeah, I didn't know this, but apparently people have been transmitting data over radio. So for instance, they have applications like WhatsApp, where again, it's literally like, if you look close into it, it's like Discord, but running over packet radio. So these are individuals that are just talking to each other over radio signals. They even got like whole Discord channels, everything. Ham radios, yada, yada, yada. They're basically finding ways to circumvent the very lines we use to communicate and share information from each other. I mean, the fact that we're sitting at a point where this is even like a thing, where this is even like becoming some reality for even somebody like me is quite wild. You know, I said literally in the video yesterday that we're at a point where I think maybe I might just want to disappear into the fucking woods and just like, or not disappear into the desert. I would love to live in the desert, like a nice little trailer, see the sun come up and go down, and just live far away from this like fucking cyberpunk dystopia hell that we're in, you know? Grow some mushrooms on the side of a log, look at the sun go down, and live life until I'm dead. I use a TNC or software modem. Actually, I actually kind of have to figure out how this works. But you can actually use a real radio and some of the software to actually route your information and actually do talk to people over the radio. This would be interesting. I also wonder what the range on this would be. I haven't really fucked with ham radio stuff a lot, but the distance can be pretty massive. I actually do wonder if where I live, could I actually be able to talk to somebody in the UK over radio? That shit would be fucking awesome. The thing about these VPN bans and banning sites like Pornhub is that even if you do this, right, what it does is it basically bans, you know, the mainstream, but it doesn't even address a lot of the places where really bad pornography or really illegal stuff is shared around. You know, it takes literally seconds for people to go onto Google search and find like a website that distributes adult material that isn't operated in a country that can be enforced. So a lot of these people are going to be going to like some fucking Eastern European like adult website where illegal stuff is there. Sometimes there can even be underage people on these websites because there's literally no law or enforcement around record keeping. And again, that's even an issue when it comes to in America, but at least if it gets exposed in America, there are some level of retributions and enforcement and like some damages you can seek. In places where there are no regulations, which is where a lot of these shady websites are held, that's where kids are going to go to. That's where adults are going to go to. So ultimately, the government won't really have any control over it. You know, it's to a point where even if you tell these people, what about things like the dark web? For instance, if you have the Brave browser like me, you can actually access Tor using the, you know, little options panel on the side. Now, I would recommend you still download the Tor browser, but again, this is very easy access to somebody that just wants to go onto the dark web. Are you going to think of banning the dark web? I mean, how would you do that? Would you prevent people from downloading software? Are we going to get to a point in society where if VPN regulation doesn't work, if website regulation doesn't work, are they going to go to Microsoft and Apple directly because these are the two largest desktop operating system providers and tell them, Okay, now we need approved apps, okay? That deep web, that Tor browser, a little too risky, okay? A lot of illegal shit on there. You gotta make sure that it won't function under your operating system. Are we gonna get to a point where computers are going to eventually become like some mobile devices like an iPhone, where you can only access, I shit you not, certain applications, whatever the approved apps list provides? Are they going to look at Android devices and say, we can't have you sideloading applications that would fall outside of the protected app status? What is the end game here, okay? No, I'll tell you what the end game is. The end game is to strip away any form of anonymity on the internet and just be able to spy and assess what every single person is doing on a day-to-day basis, and them not having any way to fight back against it. That is the end game, okay? The end game is to regulate the entirety of the internet, because when this technology was made, nobody fucking was sitting here thinking, okay, how do we make sure that there are guardrails around what people can and cannot access? It was made by a bunch of nerds who felt that sharing information should be free, sharing information is a human right, and now the government wants to take that fucking human right away. They want to limit it severely, but only for the people that are not in the elite or not in the government. That's pretty much fucking what it comes down to, okay? And that's why it's aggravating. Because, you know, back in 2012 when I started my channel, the internet was this, it still was at the time, some level of a wild, free, open range, right? You know, talking about things like creepypastas, which is crazy, right? You know, to think where we've come from all the way back then. But we're at a point where, you know, even the creepypastas and shit, right? Like, what happens when they look at the creepypasta wikis and think, this site might be distressing for minors. It contains a lot of human-created content. Let's put in some ID checks here and there. What's going to happen when, you know, you want to read shit like Jeff the Killer or something like that? You know? Or Abandoned by Disney or Squidward Suicide or some shit like that, and they need you to give an ID to access that page on the internet. That is the level we're getting to, okay? If we already haven't gotten there. And thankfully, there are ways to fight back. Again, this whole video should kind of raise some awareness into your head and think, what really is the end goal? Do they really care about the kids? And it's such a whack-a-mole level of technical understanding with these old fucks in the government. They don't even understand. Banning a VPN or restricting the VPN isn't going to stop the problem. The problem, if, again, you really cared about the kids, happens to the parents, okay? If the parents are going to be spending their money buying their kids computers, iPhones, tablets, yada, because kids don't fucking get these out of nowhere, okay? When I was a kid, all right, you got a game on a birthday, okay? You know, when a gaming console came out, you had to do a whole lot of chores to get that. No kid had the money to buy that shit, okay? Adults don't even have the money to buy some of this stuff now. So ultimately, in the end, okay, if you're buying your kid any of these things, use the parental control stuff, regulate it, and be a watchdog at home. Don't get the government to do shit like this, because ultimately in the end, they don't care about your kids, they just care about watching over me and you. That's it. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.